Whew, sometimes the hunt pays off. Today we are taking a look at Weller 107, one of the bottles I've been trying to get my hands on for quite some time now. So the question is, was it worth all the extra effort? Let's find out. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. If you can't tell, I am sort of just bouncing with energy, really super excited to get to dig into what has been somewhat of a unicorn bottle for me, and I know for a lot of you out there, it's one that's really hard to find as well. So, got my hands on Weller 107, Weller Antique, OWA, whatever you call it. It's the beautiful red and gold bottle from Weller. This one is highly sought after, marked up significantly on the secondary. And for me, this is a relatively attainable bottle. And I say relatively because, it still took me a while to get, but I do live in the Cincinnati area, just over the border in Kentucky. So I've been making trips up into Ohio quite a bit, trying to find bottles like this. Every time I go to visit my girlfriend who lives in Pittsburgh, I stop sometimes on the way there, almost every time on the way back, looking for bottles of this. I've scrolled through the Ohio Liquor website, and they have these little red bottles that tell you what the stock is, and almost always there's limited supply of this in a couple of spots that I can get to. So I go check it out and it's already gone, or the website isn't all that accurate, so it's like, no, we don't actually have that, or haven't gotten a shipment of it in a while. So I just keep betting on that. And this time it paid off, stopped in basically middle of nowhere, Ohio, and found a bottle of Weller 107. Why is this bottle so sought after? What are the stats on it? So like it says, it's 107 proof. This is the undisclosed wheated mash bill from Buffalo Trace. So the whole Weller line, we don't know what the mash bill is, but it's corn, wheat, and malted barley, that we know. Age-wise, this is thought to be between 6 and 8 years old. There's no age statement on it, but that's sort of the accepted range for this bottle. Weller line, the reason it's so popular is because this is the same mash bill, the same juice that does eventually become Pappy Van Winkle. You've got the 10-year Pappy, 15, 20, 23. So this, as it gets older and older, does become one of the most sought after bourbons in the world. And as that has become harder and harder to find and more illustrious, people have sort of seen a trickle-down effect to the whole Weller line, and this is no exception. I believe this bottle used to be pretty widely available for somewhere between 20 and 30 bucks. I mean, I've heard stories of people still maybe being able to get it at like $23 just 2 or 3 years ago. Now it's MSRP around 50. On markups, you can see this bottle as high as 100 bucks. Secondary, you can see it as high as 300 bucks in some areas. Really hard to get your hands on, continuing to increase in price, and overall supposed to be a really good bourbon, especially at 50 bucks. If you can get it at retail, it's supposed to be an absolute steal. And one of the reasons I'm so happy today is because I did in Ohio. It's state controlled, so I was able to get this for 50 bucks. We're looking at a retail bottle that is supposed to be sort of legendary. So of course the question remains, how good is it really? Is it worth all of the hype? Was it worth all the hunting for me? Is it worth all the hunting for you? Should you come to Ohio and try to get some bottles of it? Those questions we're gonna try to answer, mostly for myself, but hopefully for you today. All that being said, let's get into opening this semi-unicorn bottle for me, cracking it open together and having a pour. As I open this up, I do just wanna ask that if you're liking the video, if you like OWA, smash that like button. If you're liking all the content coming out of the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Really helps grow the channel, but also helps me know what specific kind of content to keep creating for you guys. And I just want the channel to keep getting better at helping you guys navigate the world of whiskey. All right, all that being said, this is open now, so let us pop the cork on OWA. Okay, decent cork pop. All right, first pour ever, guys. Let's hope it lives up to the hype. All righty. Okay. Gotta calm down a little bit, control myself, and dive in here. So, OWA, looking at it, it's not the darkest whiskey I've ever seen, but Certainly got a good sort of like amber color to it. All right, on the nose. Okay, first thing I notice, heck of a lot of vanilla on the nose here. Good cinnamon. That cinnamon almost is something I get a lot on wild turkey, and it's nice to feel that coming through on a Weller product or a Buffalo Trace product. There's some oak for sure. I can feel the 107 proof just a little bit. It's not overwhelming anything at all. But man, vanilla is the dominant note here. We'll obviously give it some time to open up as we go into it, but I'm getting a lot of vanilla, a good amount of oak, and a good amount of cinnamon right off the bat for a sort of 1, 2, 3 punch. Sweet and approachable, but has some heft and richness to it too. Might be a slight cherry coming through. We'll see if that sort of blossoms a little bit more as it opens up. But very enticing and something I want to dig into on the palate. So cheers, everybody. Okay, man. So first of all, pretty solid mouthfeel. I may have had 1 or 2 things that are a little bit more viscous, but that is a good mouth coating experience. Second thing I noticed is a lot of what was on the nose transferred over to the palate. So for that first sip, vanilla is still lingering, by the way, so the finish is pretty long, but heck of a lot of vanilla. Good amount of like oak, that's sweet, but not overly sweet, not like a double oaked product, just that good sweet oak. And then I got good dose of baking spices and cinnamon in particular, just like on the palate, on the nose rather. And then overall, I think there's just a little bit more brown sugar and dark fruit like cherry on the palate than there was on the nose for me. Really pleasant experience. I didn't feel like anything there was overwhelming. I didn't feel like the proof was all that noticeable. Honestly, it didn't drink as hot as a 107 I would normally anticipate for that, but it's really well balanced, and I felt like each of those flavors had their little moment to shine, and they sort of transitioned well one from the other. So pretty cohesive whiskey. Now, I'm not like absolutely wowed by it. I don't think it's the best thing I've ever tasted in my life, but it's pretty dang good. Let's go back to the nose real quick. Okay, some more brown sugar and cherry are coming through now a little bit. I mean, honestly, this reminds me like more of a wild turkey rare breed on the nose than the Weller Special Reserve, which I have also had and reviewed on the channel. So it's like, it's leaning more in that hefty wild turkey cinnamon cherry realm than it is the lighter wheated stuff that I was expecting. So really interesting there. All right, let's get into the palate for a second sip. Cheers, everybody. Wow, that one went way more oak and cherry. Vanilla is a little bit more toned down on the front palate, and the mid palate just sort of exploded with this like amount of oak. Almost a little bit bitter, but kind of balanced out by that cherry sweetness and that vanilla sweetness. Finish felt a little bit more subdued there, not as much of a flavor punch as the first sip, which is probably just because my palate's a little more acclimated, but it's still lingering around with some good heat and a little bit of lingering sweetness. So a good sip there, just a different sort of dialed up oakiness and cherryness on that sip. But let's go back in for a third sip now. We'll really focus on that finish and evaluate how long that lasts and what flavors stick around. So cheers, everybody. Okay, so that time it was like vanilla, cherry, oak, cinnamon spice. That was the progression, and the finish had a much more baking spice, cinnamon heavy kick to it. It's still lingering there. Like I almost just had a spoonful of cinnamon. That lingering heat that stays on your palate and that little bit of cinnamon sweetness that sticks around, that's still clinging to my palate. Honestly, overall, one of the things that I'm observing here is that While it's a nice, really balanced whiskey, there's a good amount of sweetness, balanced out by a good amount of oakiness and a good amount of spice. It is not the most complex thing ever. I feel like those 4 notes, vanilla, cherry, oak, and cinnamon, kind of capture the full experience here. The thing I can say about it is that it hits home on each of those. Each of those is done well and balanced with the others and sort of ramped up in flavor, which is a really nice experience. But I mean, one of the things that might be in there, there's a little bit brown sugar too. There's definitely a brown sugar presence, but it's a lighter brown sugar. So maybe it's 5 overall flavors that I'm really detecting there. And oak and brown sugar can kind of be similar for me, but it's mostly that 4 or 5 channel experience that is delightful and easy to sip on for sure. Something I could just sit with and enjoy all night long, but it is not something that I feel like changed that much over the 3 sips. It's not something that I feel like has so much intrigue or 17 layers that I'm trying to break apart, which it doesn't have to be. If it's a really well put together, cohesive experience with 4 or 5 great flavors, I almost prefer that over 17 sort of jumbled flavors. And this is doing 4 or 5 flavors really, really well. Okay, so what are my final thoughts on Weller Antique 107? So like I said, this has been sort of a unicorn bottle for me, one that's been on the top of my to-get list, been putting in extra effort to get it. I would say I'm very happy that I did. Happy that I went after it. Very happy that I got it at retail. In terms of retail and what the pricing is, I'd say that I'd put this at a $60 to $70 bottle in my head in terms of just what the current market is at, what I would like to pay for this. It would definitely not more than 70 bucks. So seeing it on secondary for 90 to 300 feels a little extreme for sure. I think it's worth around 70 bucks as the market stands today. Really happy to pay 50 for it, which is nice. In terms of comparisons to other things that are on the market, honestly, like I'm thinking a lot about that Wild Turkey Rare Breed, which sits right around 45 to 50 bucks in my area and is pretty much widely available. And I'd say that probably goes toe to toe with this and has a little bit more punch. Maybe some harsher flavors there, and Weller 107's maybe a little bit softer and more approachable. But to me, in my head, those are comparable bottles in terms of flavor experience. And you know, you don't see Rare Breed going for 300 bucks. You don't see it for going for 100 bucks even. You can pretty much always get it at retail. So for me, it's like, it's worth the experience, it's worth the hunt. It's a great bottle to have, but I'm not paying over 70 bucks for it probably. And I think that it hits a sweet spot in this $50 range for sure. And so I think that pretty much answers the question of, is it something I consider hutch worthy? Always want to have on my shelves. If 50 bucks, yes. If I can keep going to Ohio and getting a bottle of this maybe once every couple of months, 6 months or something, I definitely would love to keep Weller 107 stocked here. For anything more than 70 a bottle, no, I'm not considering this something that I need to replace every single time I run out of one. Very happy to wait until I can find another one at retail before I restock here. All right, so I think that about wraps up everything here for Weller Antique 107. Let me know in the comments below what your experience has been like with this bottle. Is it available to you in your area? Is it one that you're hunting currently? Is it one that used to be your favorite at 23 bucks and now you're not sure what you'll pay for it? Let's start a discussion about this particular Weller product in the comments below. And then of course, put down also what unicorn bottles you're going after right now. What's at the top of your to-get list? What are you searching for? What are you hoping to get? And if there's any you've been able to get your hands on recently, share that, share the love. Very much enjoyed getting to crack this one open with you guys, one that I've been hunting for a while. And that's one of the reasons I started this channel in the first place, was to sort of share in this experience as I get bottles that are a little bit harder to find, put in that extra work. This is not the hardest bottle to find in the world, but I'm proud that I was able to hunt one down and glad that I have it. All right, that's all from the Bourbon Hutch for today, everybody. Until I see you guys for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.